Okay, we're good. Happy Thursday night to all our Giant fans out there. This is, I counted actually, this is the 23rd meeting of the New York Giants Preservation Society, whether it be from Google Meets or Zoom, which we've been mostly doing now. So before we get on with tonight's event, let me just go over some things. I've added some guests, speakers in the next few months, so I just want to make you aware. Today we have, of course, Dave Lippman, who contributed to the book he's going to be speaking about, team that time won't forget, the 1951 New York Giants. Dave also was a big part of the New York Giants Historical Society. Next week, Jerry Eisenberg will be celebrating Monty Irvin's, what would be his 102nd birthday.
Holy cow.
March 4th, we have Tim Mead. Save all your baseball Hall of Fame questions for Tim. He should be a great guest. On March 18th, we have Carl Erskine, the famed Dodger pitcher. We'll be talking about the Giants Dodger rivalry. And you all will be very cordial to him. I know he's a Dodger. But
Is he still bouncing his third?
in March, we also have Dan Taylor. We'll be talking about the the Hollywood Stars. And
What day is that?
I don't have an exact date on that because Larry Baer is going to speak to us in March. It's going to be March 11th or March 25th. So Dave will take over whichever one Larry Baer does not. I want to thank Rick Swig. He's not on tonight, but Rick kind of brokered the deal. And I've been in touch with Larry Baer, and he's very gracious to come on. So you could save all your Giant questions and Willie Mays Field and, anything that we want to discuss. It'll be the proper time. April 8th. We're not going to meet April 1st. I think it's like Holy Thursday, and I don't want to ruin anybody's holiday who celebrates. April 8th will be Jay Rifkin's son will be doing the New York Giants quiz show. April 15th, Lincoln Miller has a brand new book about the Giants from 1976 to 1993, all about the possible move to East, which I'm sure many of you would have liked. He also is going to be speaking about this book, Baseball Goes West. I don't know if you can see it here.
Got it.
It's about the move from that the Giants and Dodgers made in following the 57th season. In May, we have David Krell, who did a book about 1962 about the Giants and JFK. And
what date is that?
I'm sorry?
In May? What day is that in May?
Willie Mays' birthday, May 6th.
Okay.
And then we got Karen Marco, who Steve met on the phone, spoke to her on the phone, is doing a book on Eddie Grant. It should be out for Memorial Day. And in June, we have Steve Treader, whose book will be out on Horace Stoneham. I was asked by some of you to create a letter regarding Mays Field. I did write the letter. I just don't know if it's a letter to be sent to an editor of the paper or Larry Baer. And I don't know if it needs to be sent to Larry Baer, if Larry Baer is going to be here. If you want me to read it, it'll take me about 2 minutes. If you want me to share
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I will read it to you. And it's from all of us, even though it's written by me. The 2021 Major League Baseball season starts off in flux, just as the 2020 started and concluded. Again, we will see a truncated spring training, stadiums empty or filled to minimum capacity, the threat of canceled games due to COVID, etc. This horrific virus has forced the cancellation of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum induction ceremony. Progress will allow a virtual event to happen this summer in Cooperstown, at least, as the proceedings will take place as a TV event. Our beloved game has had to endure much change, very little for the better. Meanwhile, many baseball-related jobs have been lost in most organizations, and fans are losing out due to the fact that even if they are allowed in stadiums, things will be different. Fans need some positivity, something to look forward to. One event does need to take place this summer that will enliven baseball fans everywhere, especially in San Francisco and New York. Willie Mays, arguably the GOAT of Major League Baseball, the oldest living Hall of Famer, the Say Hey Kid, the Giants, both New York and San Francisco's most recognizable icon, the man with the statue at the main entrance at Oracle Park erected in his honor, and with the stadium's address being 24 Willie Mays Plaza in tribute to his greatness, turns 90 years old on May 6th. That's correct, 90 years old. With the Giants off that day and returning home the next day from Colorado, a much-needed celebration needs and warrants to take place on May 7th, 2021. Giants fans in San Francisco and around the country need to be part of this historic event in some way. Our organization, the New York Giants Preservation Society, implore the Giants organization and Oracle Corporation to change the name of the stadium to Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park. Our organization's mission is to remember, treasure, and preserve the storied history of the Giants of the Polo Grounds. We are sure that San Franciscans feel the same passion. They want to remember, treasure, and preserve the storied history of Willie Mays in San Francisco. Renaming the stadium after him would be the highest tribute ever. The New York Giants Preservation Society, based in New York, is a growing organization despite the aging of many of its members. Most have remained faithful to the team, even though they moved some 3,000 miles away some 60 plus years ago. By the end of this decade, the Giants will have actually spent more years on the left coast than they did in Manhattan. Why did they migrate west with their team? Mentally, if not physically? 2 words, Willie Mays. Willie Mays is still so revered in New York. People remember him for the catch. Yes, the one that preceded the one made by the late, great Dwight Clark of the 49ers. They remember him for playing stickball with the neighborhood kids. His effervescent smile, his love for the game, his greatness. Streets around the Polo Grounds where he roamed center field in the 1950s have been named after him. Upon his return to his baseball roots with the trophy tours in the winters of 2011, 13, and 15, fans in our organization got a glimpse and a feel of his aura. Grown men coming to their feet as he entered the room to speak about himself and his Giants. These fans, many with tears in their eyes, not seeing an elderly idol, but envisioning a 20-something-year-old flying around the basement with his hat falling off, or going into the outfield alleys to snag a short hit. Renaming Oracle Park to Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park would not only be a great tribute to Willie, but all baseball fans that embrace him as the greatest baseball player of all time. This will, of course, not take the naming rights away from Oracle Park, and that organization would probably be seen in much brighter light for truly doing a wonderfully altruistic thing for somebody who has meant so much to San Francisco, New York, and our country. This would be truly the everlasting tribute to Willie Mays and Giants lore. I'll make this quick, I'm sorry. To date, 10 members of the Hall of Fame have left us since the 2020 baseball season. These Hall of Famers would surely be thrilled to have seen this event happen to one of their brethren. Honor Willie while he's still with us and in relatively good health. This would not only be a great tribute to him, but to all baseball fans that embrace him as the greatest baseball player ever. The late, great Peter McGowan began the process of honoring Willie Mays by naming the address of then Pacific Belt Park as 24 Willie Mays Plaza. Complete with 24 palm trees, with the main entrance called Willie Mays Gate, and having a 9-foot replica of Mays with the inscription, given in honor of Willie Mays and his fans, wherever they may be, placed at 3rd and King Street. why not go a bit further to honor Willie and his fans by renaming the current stadium again to Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park? The Giants and the Oracle Corporation, the ball is in your court, or rather on your field. They say diamonds last forever. Make this baseball diamond truly a field of dreams for Willie Mays, all his fans and followers. Do just that. Last forever. Gary Mintz and the New York Giants Preservation Society.
Great letter, Gary.
Wonderful piece. And after you pull this one off, we're
Awesome.
going to get rid of the manager and the general manager and take over management of the team and make sure we get some ball players.
That would be a wonderful thing, but I don't know how you guys feel if this, if we're going to wait on this until Larry Bear speaks to us. I think
That makes sense.
that's what I do. But
I think it's beautiful and romantic.
Yeah.
And I have one request that you add after we do that, and then Steve's request that they move the Eddie Grant plaque so it's out front where people can see it instead of hidden by the press entrance.
Perry, this is, you know, I don't know if you heard Larry Bear will be here. You bring that up to him.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Bring it
I
on.
will.
Anybody who has any, you know,
Country.
it's a, you know, it parks in San Francisco, of course, but anything related to New York, if you want to see, you know, I mentioned that Wall of Fame being changed to a franchise. Well, I'm going to bring that up. So, you know, whatever you want to speak to him about, you know, just
Okay.
hopefully he'll be free to answer anything. Mars.
Yeah, I have one thing to add. When I expressed this originally to my account rep at the ballpark, and he brought it up to the brass, and then it just
Yeah,
seemed
can you
to,
just come in, do me a favor? There are a lot more participants than the 8 that are showing.
hello. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
Mars.
say, yeah, it's not so much renaming a precedent for this.
All right. I think Larry,
Mars, Larry Bear got to your mic.
so did Horace Stoneham.
Mars, you're not coming in clear. We're gonna, hopefully later you'll be able to chat, okay?
Yeah, Gary, that's a great letter. Thank you.
It
Thanks,
is.
Renee.
You can't- I mean,
Thank
he
you.
covered every
It
base.
means a lot.
No
It means a
changes.
lot.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
You know, we had to talk about our group. We had to say about Peter McGowan. I think those were, you know, I didn't want Peter McGowan not to be mentioned because.
No, he has to be. He has to be mentioned.
Absolutely.
And you also made Oracle look good, so that works.
Absolutely. I mean, I really wrote, you know, Mars got me thinking, and I wanted to include as much as I can without, you know.
No, that was brilliant strategy to frame it that way. So
Yeah, I
nobody
want, you know, the
can-
beginning might not have said Mays right away, but I wanted to like suck in the audience about how bad things are and why things need to get better. So that's where that was coming from.
There was some passion in that letter, let me tell you.
Thank you, Renee. And again, after the Bear thing, we'll bring it up. I don't know if it's a letter to the editor, like the San Francisco Chronicle, or to Larry Bear. I don't know.
Larry Bear.
Both.
Useless.
Both.
Yeah, I would go Larry Bear first, and then right after that, go to the papers.
Okay. All right. Without further ado, Dave Lippman, who is, I tell you, whenever I hear Dave speak, if you live in New York, I think of one person on WINS, John Montone. Dave sounds just like him. God, he really sounds like him. He's got a great voice for radio. And
Great
he's
thing
also,
for radio too.
he has, besides being a contributor to the book I mentioned before, he's got a huge and great knowledge of Giant history through his grandparents and stuff. So, members of our audience, very proud to give you Dave Lippman. Dave, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
No worries. I'd also like to say I have a face made for radio. And I actually, when I was in the Navy, I actually escorted John Montone around some of our warships during Fleet Week in 1994. He was desperate to interview somebody in these ships, 5,000 sailors. One of them was from New York. apparently I was the only guy who was from New York. So I was went on record to say that I was at the time I was stationed in Japan, and he asked me what I thought of Japan, and I said they put tuna fish and octopus in their pizza, which, as far as I was concerned, was a hanging offense. And that was put on the air. My colleagues in the media truck said, "What's wrong with tuna fish and octopus and pizza?" And I said, "You guys been posted to Japan?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Okay, get posted to Japan, try it, and get back to me." And they did not argue the point any further. What I'm going to do, I'm going to read the essay I wrote, which is the last essay in the book about the 51 Giants, which is about how we celebrated the Giants' 50th anniversary of Bobby Thompson's shot in 2001. And rather than get fancy, I'll just plunge right into it. I don't know how he got hold of me. Probably it was through my membership in the Society for American Baseball Research, which is New York, San Francisco Giants, and New York Yankees listed as my interests. It might have been from Alan Blumkin, the Sabre Trivia King. But sometime in 1998 or 1999, I got a call from Brooklyn, a Brooklyn artist named Stuart Leeds, who was a Giants fan growing up and heard I'd loved the Giants and wanted me to help him get a New York Giants club off the ground. I was happy to do it. Giants are a big part of my family history. My grandfather, Joe Lippman, was introduced to baseball in general and the Giants in particular in 1908 when his elder brother Sam, known to the family as Izzy, took Grandpa to see Ricky Madison fire a 3-zip shutout at the Cincinnati Reds. Grandpa was hooked. To add to the linkage, Sam worked in the pool hall Giants manager John McGraw owned with notorious gambler Arnold Rothstein emptying spittoons. That enabled Grandpa to actually meet guys like McGraw and Mathewson and attend games like Merkel's Boner and the World Series games the Giants played through 1924. Izzy moved up in the Rothstein organization to become a bagman and enforcer. Grandpa moved up through Fordham University to become a pharmacist. Izzy skimmed the take from Rothstein for unknown reasons. Grandpa had a hard time keeping the pharmacy afloat in the Great Depression. Sam was waxed and is forever a cornerstone in the Hellgate Bridge. Grandpa died in 1975 in his sleep in a Florida retirement community. His two teams were the Giants and the Yankees, as were my father's. Unlike millions of other Giants and Dodgers fans, neither Grandpa nor Dad claimed to have been present when Bobby Thompson unloaded his historic shot. Dad was in the Army in California getting ready to ship out to the Korean War. Grandpa was running his pharmacy in Washington Heights listening to Russ Hodges. When the Giants moved to San Francisco, Dad and Mom went out there too. Dad working for an advertising agency, so didn't have separation problems. He had a bigger one in 1962 when his two favorite teams facing off in the World Series, and me about to be born. The Giants lost the World Series. Kennedy got those missiles out of Cuba. Richard Nixon was predicted to lose the California governor's race. And Mom went into labor minutes later, and I showed up the next day. Same day Eleanor Roosevelt died. I missed her by 6 hours. 37 years later, it was time to honor Grandpa's and Dad's favorite team and legacy by putting together the Giants Club and doing their newsletter. So I did. And we put together a lunch for like-minded folks to honor Bobby Thompson himself at Forlini's, an extremely popular restaurant near the courthouse complex in Lower Manhattan, where for decades, cops, assistant district attorneys, defense lawyers, and their high-priced clientele have hung out there after work, swirling drinks, exchanging gossip, and eating terrific pasta. It was the perfect place to honor someone who was central to New York sports history. We sent out the invites, contacted Bobby, who was delighted to come. We arranged his transportation and booked the restaurant for an October Saturday luncheon close to the actual 50th anniversary. The San Francisco Giants were generous enough to send us posters they had given away to fans about the home run, which included reprints of historic Willard Mullen cartoons of the pennant race's final weeks and days, depicting the famed Dodger bum and mountainous giant. It's sad nobody uses those characters anymore. Then we ran into some trouble. First, Bobby's wife, Winky, died. Then his son, Bobby Jr. I thought about how the Giants had a history of bad luck, most of which Grandpa had seen, from Merkel's boner in 1908 to the Hank Gowdy tripping on his mask in 1924 to lose that World Series. And in 2001, they were amid a 50-year drought between world championships. The bad luck bottomed out September 11, 2001, and when I made my way to the luncheon the next month, Lower Manhattan streets were cordoned off by National Guardsmen wearing Kevlar helmets and clutching automatic rifles. Gritty ash and smoke still covered buildings, and walls were festooned with posters depicting people who had gone missing in the World Trade Center's destruction, asking the public to help find them. Baseball didn't seem so important, yet at the same time, it seemed more important than ever, a symbol of determination and resilience amid tragedy. As I approached the restaurant, there was Bobby himself with a friend about to enter. I guess this is the place, the friend said. I think so, Bobby answered, pointing out someone going in who was wearing a New York Giants jacket. He looks like one of us. I introduced myself and told Bobby this was the place and held the door open. The Staten Island Scot entered Forlini's, and the group of people there turned, saw him, recognized him, and burst into applause. Being one of the people who organized the event, I got to sit at the head table and deliver remarks. Fortunately, someone taped the event to posterity, so I have them. Before we did the ceremonial stuff, though, we had lunch, and I started off by amusing Bobby by requesting the inevitable autographs on various books about the Giants, including my battered 1984 Giants yearbook, which was themed to honor the team's all-stars over the years, as the Giants hosted the All-Star game that year. It's also signed by JoJo Moore, Harry Danning, and Monty Irvin, who I think you all know. Bobby was interested in the yearbook and flipped through it. He recognized teammates and opponents and didn't seem to realize just how many All-Stars the Giants had in their history. After that, over lunch, we talked. What did he think of today's salaries? Immense. He shook his head. What did he think of today's players? They were good. He didn't watch the game that much, but he liked what he saw. One difference now is how ball players look physically bigger. They did more weight training now, often year-round. In his day, Bobby said, they do some calisthenics before games, and that was about it. In the off-season, nothing. I asked Bobby who was the toughest pitcher he'd ever faced. Ewell Blackwell, he responded swiftly. I agreed that a lot of people would agree that the Eel was pretty tough. Then it was time for the ceremonies. We sang the Giants' old theme song from the 1950s. We're calling all fans, all you Giant ball fans. Stu leads it to talk as president. Attendees gave their memories of where they were when Bobby hit the shot. Most, like Grandpa, heard Russ Hodges screaming his head off on the radio. Then came my turn. I had my notes prepared. Having spent the last few years being a Navy TV and radio broadcaster, I had no problem with public speaking, and I prepared my words. Being in love with the sound of my own voice, I always had lengthy speeches. First, I took care of the pleasantries, thanking everyone for coming, thanking the event organizers for doing their jobs, thanking Forlini's for the food. Then I talked about Bobby's life and career. I pointed out that my father had watched Giants games in the late 1940s from the Polo Grounds bleachers when the team had great hitting and no pitching. Dad remembered Bobby Thompson not as much for his great home run, but for being a steady bat and RBI presence in the team's batting order. I also pointed out that he had done something more important than play for the Giants. He had served our country in time of war as a member of the U.S. Army Air Force in World War II, and thanked him as a fellow veteran for that. Then I noted that Bobby had distinguished himself as a businessman and community member, and noted that he had suffered the losses of his son and wife in the same year, and extended condolences on behalf of the entire club to him and that. Finally, I discussed the history and pain that hung over this luncheon. The lower Manhattan surrounding us had recently been the target of a horrific terrorist attack that had killed thousands of our fellow New Yorkers and torn out our hearts. However, like the Giants of 50 years ago, our entire city and region were resilient and would refuse to give up in the face of this attack and would rise to victory. Applause came from all around, and I returned to my seat. Bobby now rose and delivered his remarks. He started off spontaneously, thanking us for our words and mine. He was grateful for the thanks for his military service and the condolences. He enjoyed his years in baseball, particularly with the Giants, and felt the love and loyalty of Giants fans. After that, he recounted the famous home run. It sounded slightly rehearsed, but I remembered that Bobby had been giving the account of his particular at bat for the past 50 years. There wasn't much more he could say about it anymore. He told us how he'd been very irritated at having a horrible day at the plate and in the field and wanted to do something positive and was beating himself up as he came to bat. After the first pitch from Ralph Branca, Thompson said he was sure Branca would throw another fastball. Later, he would admit that he knew such was the case, but not this afternoon. Thompson described the home run, running around the bases as if he was gliding on air, fans cheering, his teammates gathering at home plate, and thundering into the happy throng when he completed the circuit. Self-effacing to the end, Thompson admitted that if he were a better hitter, he'd have taken the critical pitch. It was a ball. The evening of the home run, he'd appeared in the Perry Como show, where he sang a jingle for the Giants radio sponsor, Chesterfield Cigarettes, before a live audience. I marveled at that. Ball players still do late-night TV shows, still make commercial endorsements, and still hit pennant-winning home runs, but not for cigarettes anymore. After the Como show, Thompson took a taxi home to Staten Island, where his older brother, Jim, asked, "Do you realize what you did?" Thompson found the question silly. He'd won a pennant, and the 3 RBIs in the homer gave him a 100-ribby season, an important negotiating point for his 1952 contract. "No, you don't see it," Jim said. "That might never happen again." And then Bobby Thompson realized how important the home run had been to the American psyche. At the luncheon, he finished by saying again how humbled he was to be honored by the fans there because, quote, "baseball is a wonderful game," unquote. We gave him a check as an honorarium, and he was going to give it to a Little League program he supported through his church. But Stu Lead said, "No, this is for you. Don't spend it all in one place," I added for gag value. Then a boombox played the now familiar tape of Russ Hodges' broadcast, and Bobby smiled and said, "Who is that guy?" After that, everybody headed in their various directions home. Bobby moved down to South Carolina sometime after that and died on August 16th, 2010. 2 months later, the Giants won their first World Series since 1954 and did so again in 2012 and 2014, going from a semi-forgotten and jinxed team playing before empty seats in a windy mausoleum to a baseball powerhouse. There's an irony in how New Yorkers have mostly forgotten the Giants but still worship the Brooklyn Dodgers. When the San Francisco Giants won their 3 series, they brought the immense World Championship trophy to New York, booked a hotel, and held breakfast for Giant fan clubs and expatriate San Franciscans to celebrate the victory, bringing along their ownership and Willie Mays himself, frail but alert, to talk to the fans. The Dodgers, I point out, have not seen fit to do so, even though one can argue that Citi Field provides them with a second home ballpark. I missed the Giants' 2010 event due to a work commitment, but made the 2012 and 2014 celebrations. At both, I took time to deliver a recruiting pitch for the upcoming Sabre events, thank Willie for serving in the armed forces in time of war. Audience reaction was 2 seconds of stunned silence, followed by lengthy applause. They'd forgotten that he was drafted during the Korean War. Then I asked Willie who was the best defensive center fielder he ever saw, besides himself. Willie, diplomatic to the end, evaded the question, but left a hint that he thought it was Ken Griffey Jr. Good choice, I noted. Someone else asked Willie how he would have fared if Bobby Thompson had been walked, intentionally or otherwise, in the critical game in 1951. Willie expressed relief at not having to come to bat in that situation. He'd not been hitting well down the stretch and was grateful that a veteran like Thompson was hitting in that situation. I was struck by this dose of humility from a titan like Mays. It was a generous and truthful statement. Grandpa was also a man who didn't tell lies. Unlike many Giants fans, he did not say he was at the game. He had a drugstore to run. He heard Russ Hodges give his hysterical count of the home run and cheered and roared over it. Next day, he talked with his brother-in-law, Frank Denker, who ran a drugstore in Brooklyn and was a con man by night. Frank, of course, was a Dodgers fan, and he'd listened to Red Barber's account of the game. Grandpa recounted Hodges' version, and Frank told Grandpa that Barber had simply said, "It's in there for the pennant," and then shut up, trained not to talk against the crowd. When Barber went back in the air, he tried to console Dodgers fans by giving that week's American casualty bill from the endless grinding Korean War. The grim number, about 150 dead, gave Grandpa a pause amid the celebrations. At that time, Dad was an Army corporal in Fort Lewis, Washington, waiting to board a troop ship that would take him to Korea and service up the line. Dad went to Korea and Item Company, the 31st Infantry Regiment, 2 weeks later. Some months later, half of his company would be killed in a failed attack on Jane Russell Hill. It would take Dad only 40 years to talk to me about it. Russ gave the home run glory. Red put it in perspective. 50 years later, as we celebrated the home run amid the aftershocks of 9/11, I saw the value of both broadcasts. And that's it. The end.
Where was the pharmacy that your father had or grandfather?
Grandpa's third and final pharmacy was on the north, at that time was at the northeast corner of 186th Street and Amsterdam Avenue.
Oh my God, that's Cantor's. Cantor's Pharmacy. My brother-in-law worked there.
No,
Wow.
it was Joe Lippman's, but he sold it, and so he might have worked there after Grandpa sold it. And
Oh
it is
yeah,
now,
way later. My brother-in-law worked there probably in the 70s.
that's why. By then, Grandpa
Wow.
sold it.
What a small world.
Grandpa, the store is now the Yeshiva University bookstore. It
Yeah,
was
right.
when I went there with Dad on the last time we ever went on a trip anywhere together before he died. He wanted me to make sure I knew. Oh, that's great. He wanted me to make sure I knew all the places he'd lived in his life before he died. And, you know, we actually ran into a guy in a store from the neighborhood who remembered Dad as a kid. It was very surreal.
The mom pop store. You think these
Dave,
guys ever smoke cigarettes?
No.
Dave, I know that the book is a huge compilation. Do you have it with you to show everybody?
Yeah, I got it right here in front of me, and I will do so. Can
Yeah,
everybody see it?
and you know, Stu Thornley contributed to the book as well. Rob Garrett, Steve Treader, a lot of the members of our organization contributed. Dave, that
Yeah.
was wonderful. How do they go about getting the book?
You reach out to the Society for American Baseball Research. You can buy it on their webpage. It's less if you're a member. It's about $16.99 plus shipping. It
Exactly.
comes in paperback. You can also get it as a Kindle book, and you can download it as a PDF. And I think you can download the PDF for free, but don't hold me to it. Here you.
What year was it published?
Oh, that's
I think 2017.
it was published in
2015.
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
You know,
let me
Dave,
look at
also one other thing. Harvey Weinberg was gracious enough to invite me when Bobby Thompson was inducted into the Staten Island Hall of Fame. And you know, Harvey, you could speak about the if he was tipped off about that pitch or not, because you know, according to the
He
Prager
wasn't.
book and Thompson, why don't you tell what you spoke to him about, Harvey?
Well, through a dear friend, now departed, Bill Murphy, I met Bobby actually for the first time in early 1995. But getting to what Gary's talking about, when Josh Prager's book was being excerpted in the Wall Street Journal, Bill, me, and Bill was then the Staten Island district attorney, and he was leaving office. We went out to Bobby's house out in New Jersey, and Bobby raised the issue. We were sitting in his kitchen. We had had lunch at a wonderful pub, and we were sitting in his kitchen. He was autographing baseballs and hats and whatnot. And he looked up from what he was signing, and he raised the issue of the sign stealing that Josh Prager had written about. And he looked at me and he said, what did I think of the articles? And I thought Bobby was about to admit that he got the sign. I stopped breathing at that moment. And because he said, you know, it was legal.
It was
I don't know
what?
if it was legal or not, but what he then said was that he didn't take the sign. He knew the Giants were stealing the signs, but Sal Evars was in the right field bullpen. He was getting the signal from the center field clubhouse and relaying whether it was a fastball or a breaking pitch to the batter. And Bobby was sure that Sal Evars wasn't getting anything right. So he didn't want the sign because he said if Sal signaled it was a curveball and he leaned in and it was a fastball, he'd take it right in the head. And he was more than convincing. I wanted to be convinced. I had the good fortune to be able to have dinner with him a number of times, and one of the first occasion, I won't go through the whole dinner, but he told a story about being with Ralph Branca at one of the baseball writers' dinners where they sang a duet because
That
of
was
you.
that was that winter. They did it
And
that very winter.
and Bobby Thompson sat at the table we were at, and he sang the song with the
Mhm.
word "because of you." And my wife, who was with me, tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "You didn't even bring a tape recorder." I said, "Helen, I didn't. Who knew Bobby Thompson was going to serenade us?" He had a good voice too.
Very good.
Yeah.
As opposed to Branca, who couldn't hold a note.
You know, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, but HBO did a documentary called Shot Heard Around the World. And I remember that documentary vividly. And he outright said, no, I wasn't taking signs at all. I don't know what anybody's talking about. And he did sing that song in that documentary too. It's a great documentary.
He sang "Because of You."
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
It's at the end before the credits come in. Yeah, it's a great documentary if you ever see it. Shot Heard Around the World, HBO.
Harvey, I know I said it on occasion, but that really was what a wonderful night that was, and I thank you again.
Yeah, but that was Bobby was an unassuming guy.
Yeah, that was what my
I'll
biggest.
tell you one quick story. I think I've told this once before, but Bill Murphy was a wonderful guy and an avid Giants fan. Avid. Bill was born and raised and died in Staten Island, and Bill's mom was a Giants fan, and of course Bobby was a Staten Islander. And when Bobby at one point was nominated to become a federal judge, he never was able to do it because he had suffered from diabetes and it just took too much out of him. But he was given a retirement party at a hotel on Staten Island, and there was about 450 people there. And Bobby, of course, was invited. And Bill assigned me and Helen to sit at a table with Bobby because Bill's large family was at another table. And this room was populated by judges and district attorneys and lawyers. And I mean, Billy was a wonderful guy. And I'm sitting there with Bobby Thompson, and these guys would go over to Bill's table and shake his hand, and then they'd come over to our table where they would meet Bobby Thompson. And I knew most of these guys, I knew them by sight. I didn't know them personally, and I would introduce them to Bobby. And I would tell Bobby, I said, "This is an appellate judge. This is the district attorney of Queens." And Bobby said to me, he says, "Wow, this is really a big deal." And I said, "Bobby," I said, "I got to tell you something. There's a couple of hundred judges here. There's a couple of hundred lawyers here, but there's only one guy who ever walked out on a Major League Baseball field and hit the home run that will never be forgotten." And I got to tell you, these judges and lawyers, they were little kids when they came over to Bobby Thompson. They dropped all their facade. I mean, and yet to Bobby, he was in awe of them. He really was just a wonderful guy. And the last part of the story is when my wife and I first met him, and I can't find the picture. I'll find the picture eventually. There's Bobby, me, and Helen, and Bobby towered over us. I'm 5'10", and Bobby was what, 6'4", and so we're walking into the room where they're going to have the banquet, and Helen, God bless her, she says to Bobby, "I got to tell you, Bobby, I grew up a Dodgers fan." And Bobby looks at her and says, "That's all right, dear. My dad was a Dodgers fan." Then he turns. No, wait. That's funny, but it gets better. He says, "Don't worry, dear. My dad was a Dodgers fan." And then he turns to me and he says, "Until I signed with the Giants."
Any questions for Dave?
Yeah, I'll take any questions.
Wasn't your drugstore just a few blocks from Washington High School, which was
Excuse me?
186? I went to Washington High School, so your grandfather's drugstore was,
Right.
Yeah, he had three. The first one was at Hazen and Dykeman, which he had to move out of because the building was sinking into a swamp. And then he moved to he moved to a drugstore at 186th and Broadway in the southeast corner that was lit by gas lamps and had rats in it. And it was the store across the street was owned by an anti-Semite who was literally trying to drive Grandpa out of business during the Depression. So Grandpa hung up a sign saying, "The guy across the street is an anti-Semite trying to drive me out of business." And that worked because people went to Grandpa's drugstore and not to the guy across the street. So the guy across the street sold that store to his managers because he didn't see the point, and they sold that one to Grandpa, and that's the one that he finished up with. But they were in Washington Heights until about 1972 or thereabouts. So I spent a good chunk of my life riding the #1 train from Greenwich Village to Washington Heights to visit Grandma and Grandpa.
Dave, I got a question for you regarding the book. So it's a compilation and
articles.
Right, of articles from Sabre in 2015. Did somebody ask you to write this, or you decided to contribute based on your?
I asked them if they wanted an essay about that luncheon, and they basically said, "Go forth and conquer." And I turned it in, and apparently they liked it. The rest of the book, the bulk of the book, are biographies of the players, Leo, the coaches, the broadcasters, Horace,
Trainer, everybody.
Yeah, everybody
Really,
in
I
it.
definitely want the book.
Great book.
It's a great book, Hindi.
I must have it.
I'll tell you what, Hindi, I can get it. To non-members, it's $34. I can get it for $18. So if you get in touch with me, I can order it and then ship it to you.
Okay.
And, so that you can save you can get it at half price. I'm happy to. I'm happy to do that. And then of course I'll autograph the.
If anybody wants the book, just tell me, and I'll forward the list to Dave. How's that, Dave?
Okay, and I would love it autographed. That would be great.
Hey, Dave, do you send
I
the
remember the game, by the way. I'm older than I look.
Nonsense.
You look great, Hindi.
Yes. Yeah, Jeff points out Sabre members can download the book as a PDF or in Kindle for free, but you have to be a member.
No, I don't like Kindle. I like the real book.
Well, you can get the PDF as well.
Aaron,
Dave.
you got a question, Aaron?
Just asking, Dave, do you send it to Braves fans too? Just an inside joke.
Yeah, if they want to read it.
I have a question. Can I ask a question? It's concerning the 51 playoff. And I was just thinking when we were talking about the 51 playoff, if they had sabermetrics like they do today, Branca probably doesn't pitch to Thompson.
No.
Because he gave up a home run. What was it, 2 days before?
Yes.
And
I know they were talking about
also he was this is Mike Mitchell. He was 1-4 against the Giants going into the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder. I mean, I know that they said that Erskine was
Bouncing
throwing
his
balls
dirt.
in the dirt. Yeah, in the bullpen. You know, was that the only guy they had out there? I mean, was
Yep,
it just
those are the
Erskine and
only two
Brinker?
guys- Those are the only two guys warming up. And look, I
Yeah.
gotta tell you something. As far as I'm concerned, the third game of that playoff reveals to me the weaknesses of Charlie Dressen as a baseball manager, because he also forgot to cover the hole in the ninth inning.
He was holding the runner on with a
He was
lefty.
holding the runner on
Right,
when he had no
exactly.
bus- he had
Right.
no need to hold the
Exactly.
runner on. And, I'm sorry.
Oh, he's just like an egomaniac anyway. I mean, he thought he could just pull a rabbit out of a hat.
But he
Yeah.
told the players,
You said,
hold them till the 8th, I'll take it over.
And
you
Right,
guys know
that
this,
is
but
correct.
that is
I,
why they needed Walter Alston to win in 55, which was not the best Dodger team. They were better squad in 52 or 53,
53.
but that was Dressen.
Indy,
Right.
go ahead.
you must know this, that Bobby Thompson and Ralph Branca used to sit together at Cooperstown on Hall of Fame weekend.
Not
And
just
there was a
Cooperstown, a
picture
lot
of
of
them
places.
both. I don't know if you can see this. You probably can't. But it's me getting,
An autograph from both.
yeah, well, I have to, I'm very ashamed. I only took Bobby Thompson's autograph. And then I
I
felt
got
bad.
both.
I felt
I
bad.
did-
And they were
they
good
did-
friends. They really were.
They were. I didn't.
Let's
even-
go
I went
both
to the
together.
event they did in Hoboken. Both of them were there, and I remember that this was before the 50th anniversary, because I went up to them to get autographs. I forget what on, and I think I had Branca sign The Boys of Summer, and I told Bobby what I mentioned about how my father considered him a steady force with the Giants long before that home run. That was when Dad would sit in the bleachers at the Polo Grounds and watch ball games and study for his tests at NYU. And he also knew Ralph Branca as a pitcher for NYU, because he pitched for NYU right after World War II when Dad was attending the very same university. So he remembered Thompson was as a star Giant and Branca as a star NYU pitcher. And I told this to those two guys, and Branca laughed and said, well, I never graduated. And I finished up as saying, I just want you two guys to remember that there are some people in this world who remember you for more than one moment in your lives. And I'll never forget how their faces lit up on me saying that. And my main comment, I got to tell you, we talk about the Prager book for the whole thing about did the Giants do any sign stealing? But when I first read the Prager book, my immediate reaction, by then both my father and grandfather were dead, was to say, oh my God, I wish they were alive, because that book is so full of period color that they would have loved it. I mean, Dad was a young guy, 2 years out of college in 51. My grandfather was an older man running a drugstore. They would have loved reading all the cultural and historic and societal references to what was going on in America and the world and the celebrities at the time. I mean, I wanted to, and I looked at some of these things, like they had the exact phone number for the Giants front office and the price of the 20-cent toll on the Triborough Bridge. And I wanted to ask Dad, hey, Dad, is that right? It was 20 cents in the Triborough Bridge in 1951. And I'm sure he could have told me, because he had to throw his 2 dimes, in the machine every time he went over it.
Speaking of the book, this October 3rd will be the 70th anniversary, and it looks like Josh Prager might come and speak to us after all. So we are gonna try to get him right around October 3rd. October 3rd is a Sunday, and
we'll bring rotten fruit.
We'll probably do it the Thursday before if we can.
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If
Gotta be
anybody
good.
remember, there was an
Go ahead.
Does anybody remember 95, 96 when Branca and Thompson were at a B'nai B'rith meeting in Jersey?
The one I went to was in Hoboken. I don't remember if it was done by the B'nai B'rith. And Hoboken is definitely in New Jersey, so we could be discussing the same event. I don't recall.
Joe McCoy, do you want to show us something?
Yeah, I want to show you this that I picked up, and I had Bobby Thompson and Ralph Branca sign this, and it's the 1951 Post.
When it was a good paper.
Thursday, October 4th, 1951, and you've got a picture of Branca sitting on the stairs over here. Let me see.
That's the famous picture.
That's Branca sitting on the stairs,
Prize?
and it's signed by Bobby. And this is Here We Go Again.
Yeah.
World Series with the Giants and the
Very nice.
Dodgers. Got a great picture of the Polo Grounds down here. I don't know if you can see it. And Yankee Stadium up there.
Yeah.
Ralph Branca was half Jewish, right?
He found out late in his
Not
life.
Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After talking to Joshua, he found out. They figured it out.
Right.
Yeah, that was an interesting story in itself. Hey, David,
Yes,
and Gary, I think Gary went.
I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Speaking from a woman's perspective, I want to thank both of you for the belated Valentine, because tonight has just been very romantic hearing you read your letter, Gary, and David, having you read your story. That there's just nothing more romantic to me than having a guy read to me. So thank you both. And I just want to say my life is so barren otherwise that this is my romance. So thank you for giving me my romance.
I thought mine was too long. I'm sorry. But thank you.
You know, it is long, but there's just so much beauty and energy in it that, you know, so what? I mean, you can cut it if you want, but I think it's just beautiful. And now, David, I have a question for you. You closed out your excerpt by mentioning the 2 broadcasts, but wasn't there a third by
Yes,
Bob
mutual.
Has
Mutual
anybody,
broadcast.
did you ever hear that? Has anybody
Yeah,
ever heard
I've
that?
heard all 3.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Perry, it's on Josh Prager's website.
Okay, thank you.
Just
I'd
type
love-
in
I'd
when
love
you
to
look
listen
at
to it.
Echoing Green and you'll hear radio calls.
Okay,
And
I
it's
knew Bob. I would see him frequently at, you know, banquets like the writers' dinner, and his son Rick played in a couple of leagues that I umpired for back in the 1980s. So he was a very nice man. So I'm glad some people remember him. Bob Wolf was a
Gordon
very
McClendon
nice
was
guy.
doing a national broadcast, and
Yes.
there was a guy doing a Spanish language broadcast, which is interesting because that's kind of early for that in some ways. But by 1951, New York had a large Latino community, but you know, my grandfather, if he was going to listen to a Giants game, it was Russ Hodges or nobody, and Uncle Frank, if he was going to listen to a Dodgers game, it was Red Barber or nobody. So you know, it was immaterial. You know, he didn't listen. Then the Yankees, they'd listen to Mel Allen, and Frank ran his drugstore on Atlantic Avenue. So, you know, needless to say, he was a Dodgers fan when he wasn't trying to con people.
What is the truth to the story that the Russ Hodges broadcast, the only one that we actually had to listen to, was recorded by a Dodger fan, and they were up by 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th, and he wanted to keep that for posterity and play it to his Giant fan friends just to rub it in. Is that actually a true story?
Yeah, I heard that.
I've heard that too, and I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Russ Hodges says that the fella had just gotten a tape recorder, and he and his family were playing around with it, and they just said, "Well, as long as we're playing with it, let's put the game on." And he apparently then contacted Hodges later, and the radio station did not tape the game. So that guy was the only hope. And he
Right.
came out of nowhere and contacted him. And I think Russ gave him $10 for the.
Right. Was he a Dodger fan? Did you know
$10
that
for that
guy
guy.
was a Dodger fan?
That was a Dodger fan.
Yeah, yeah, he was a Dodger fan.
Well, there's the
No,
McClendon,
Josh Prager talks about that in detail in his book. In
but there's the
great
McClendon
detail.
tapes.
By the
He was
way,
he was a Giants fan.
There's the McClendon tapes of the whole game.
Right.
There's the McClendon tape. He was talking though about Hodges though.
Okay.
That's the only
Right.
thing there ever was of the
Right, right.
Hodges thing.
Yeah,
By
that
the way-
individual's mother recorded the ninth
Right.
inning.
I
that's
And
story-
Prager
Detroit-
details that in enormous detail.
The Detroit Tiger announcer, what was his name again?
Harwell.
He was a side.
By the way, you've all seen The Godfather, of course, and you all must know the scene where Santino meets his well-documented fate in that car.
Exactly. Yes.
You listen very, very closely when he pulls up at the toll gate.
Right.
The toll collector is listening to the
right.
Clint Hartung's on third, but and Mueller on second. I'm sorry, Botman's on second, but he'll be running like the wind if Bobby hits one. And then the toll collector drops his coin, closes the window. 15 guys appear with their Tommy guns, and they turn Santino into a bag of blood.
He was
I get such
he
a
was
kick
Swiss
out of that.
cheese was what he was.
Yeah. Because from I every time I see that picture, I can tell friends or family, whoever said, now I can tell you the exact time and date this is happening.
Right. Now there was another thing about the 51 playoffs. One you mentioned about Hodges holding Al Dark on with a 3-run lead, and had Hodges been a step back, Mueller's single to right would have been a 3-6-3 double play.
That's right.
Matthew pops up next, and the inning's over. But there's another thing in that there was a coin toss before the series that the winner could decide whether they got the first game at home or the second and third game at home. The Dodgers won the coin toss. They decided to have the first game at home and give the Giants the second and the third game at home. That for the life of me, I will never understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. I never
that's
figured
also
that
in
out.
the documentary. I remember seeing that.
I just thought it was sheer Dodger arrogance that they did that. They figured they'd take it at home in the first game and then clobber the Giants in the second game, which, it didn't work out that way, as we know. The Giants, won the first
Second
game.
game 10-0.
Yeah.
10-0.
Jones.
Labine, yes.
I mean, his arrogance was so ridiculous. He wore his pitching staff out going into the postseason.
Well, it was either September 20th or 29th. I believe it's a Daily News article where the headline is "We'll win it anyway." Which was Gresson. And
Just curious. How many of you guys actually heard that recording in real time, and what were your emotions at the time? I was 10 years old, and I had it on the radio.
Can you hear me? I got home from school. I watched the 8th and 9th innings. I saw that home run on TV.
That's my story also. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so did I. It's the same thing. Yeah.
The nearest I have to that, because of my youth, is either Bucky Dent's homer in '78 or a dribbler down to first under the bag. Night comes home.
Gets by Buckner.
Behind the bag, Vin Scully, who was always perfect. And I was sitting there in shock,
What else for you guys was at Forlini's on that day? That was a great event. Anybody else?
Well,
They
I
were
don't
my whole
recall.
family.
It's 20 years, and there were a lot of nice folks there. I suspect that some of them are now with this
They were my whole
organization.
family. It was huge. It was packed. The place was packed.
Yeah.
Dave, I know, Stuart was the leader of the Historical Society. Did you accompany Steve Rothschild from the walk from the Polo Grounds to Yankee Stadium?
No, I don't think I have that picture and bring it in.
No, I once walked in the opposite direction across the McCombs Dam Bridge, but I never walked from the PG to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I think Stewart led his group at the time. I guess they all met at the Polo Grounds, and the Giants were playing the Yankees. And I don't know how many of them.
I heard that. Gary, I heard that. I wasn't there for that. I heard the aftermath of that because I just wasn't available for that. I wish I did. I mean, it was just to hear their stories going back and forth.
Stewart was a very nice man. He really was.
Good guy.
You know, when I first joined this group, the very first gathering that I went to was at Forlini's when Stewart was still there. I think He Who Shall Remain Nameless was beginning to take over. But it was a very nice way to kick off my membership with this group, I remember. And it all kind of went downhill fast after that. But Stewart was a very nice man, and he also was the one who found the Jack, the football player with the plaque at the Polo Grounds that went missing along with the Eddie Grant plaque.
Starts with an L, I think. Lorsky or
Jack Lummel, something like.
No,
I think it was Lummel.
Before I forget, it is in that documentary as well.
Nice picture, Steve.
Yeah, this is the Stewart Leeds.
Stewart Leeds is in that docu.
With the guy.
Yeah, he was the one that found the plaque in a clothes store. He saw it, being used as a display prop, and rescued it. And now it's over at NFL headquarters in the Meadowlands, I think.
Oh, good.
Well, this group here that went to the Polo Grounds, that was the first interleague match in 2002. It was the Sunday game, and we met at the Polo Grounds, and we're walking, and this guy sees my friend Alan Abrams, may rest in peace, and me with the Giant outfits. It was the superintendent of the building. I think he thought the Giants were coming back, and we told him no. So he took us to the plaque, which is outside of home plate. And then a couple of these people started measuring the home run. And I said to Alan, this is over and above. Let's get the heck out of here. And we did. We ran across the bridge. We had Giants towels, and the Yankee fans started screaming at us. Thought we were going to get killed, but we were up above. So we made it to the game. But when I left, I went to all three games that weekend. I'm sure a lot of you did too. When I left on Sunday, there were a bunch of people touring from San Francisco. And I remember saying to one of the guys, you guys have a good time here? And the guy says to me, not only do we have a good time, you know what? Pac Bell is a beautiful park, but this smells baseball.
Yeah,
under the L, and it's true.
Anyone notice?
The toughest time I had at Yankee Stadium as a Giants fan and a Yankees fan was Mariano Rivera Day, because the Giants were playing the Yankees, and they were honoring Mariano, who is one of my professional role models and mentors and possesses the most devastating weapon in the history of the game. And the problem for me was if I wore Giants stuff, I would be disrespecting my idol. If I wore Yankee stuff, I was going to be disrespecting the Giants. So I said, I got to wear Mariano stuff because he's had a personal impact on me. But there were a lot of Giant people there. And I made a point of going up to them and saying, I'm a Giants fan, 3 generations and the whole thing. And so they said, so what are you going to do today? I said, I'm going to root for Mariano and good baseball. And as it turned out at the ceremony, the Giants presented Mariano with a gift, which I think was an oil painting. And the three Giants who did it.
And a guitar.
What's that?
And a guitar from the.
And a guitar from, yes, because Metallica serenaded him with his entrance music as he came in.
Enter Sandman. And the guitar was autographed by Willie Mays.
Willie Mays?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow, that's a good one.
The guys who did it were 3 former Yankees, Bam Bam Mullins, I forget the second, and his predecessor as king of saves for the Yankees, Dave Righetti.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was.
Notice it. Hello? Does anyone notice that Bobby Thompson lost World Series money twice.
Yeah, they traded him twice,
Giants
once to
to the
the
Braves.
Braves and once to the Giants.
And one-
57, 54. Yeah, good,
Yeah,
good,
54 and
good question.
57, the teams he was traded away from
Right.
wound up in the World Series, and he got no World Series money twice.
But Bobby was proud of the fact that he was traded for Johnny Antonelli,
Yes.
who he pointed out was
Yeah,
very
21 and 8.
important in the Giants winning in 1954.
Yeah.
I can tell you a story about that trade. So, as some of you know, my great uncle was Tom Sheehan, the Giants scout. And last summer, researching him, I found out that the Giants were trying to get Bob Buell from the Braves, and the Braves wanted Thompson, and Stoneham didn't want to, or the Braves didn't want to give up Buell, and they were saying that they would do it for Antonelli. And Sheehan was in Puerto Rico during the offseason and saw a young Henry Aaron, came back and told Stoneham, we need to get this trade done before they figure out who this Henry Aaron is, because as soon as they get a good look at him, they're going to have no interest in Thompson. And so they agreed to take Antonelli instead of Buell, and the rest is history. Thompson broke his ankle. And
Wow.
Hey, Gary, good
his
news.
career began.
Rosenthal went to the Bay Area today.
I saw that.
Ah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he's with the A's. Your buddy Zaidi fell asleep at the helm again.
You know what? The guy had a good half a season, Steve. He's been nothing. He hasn't been any good for years.
Better than what we're going to put out there, unless you bring back Armando Benitez.
Sorry, Larry Hand says Jack Loomis on the chat.
Loomis. Thank you. Jack Loomis. That's it.
L-U-M-M-U-S.
That's
That
the
is
one that's
correct.
going to be the closer?
No, that's the plaque that Perry was talking about.
Oh, okay, I got you. Sorry.
One of the missing plaques from the Polo Grounds.
Try and stay with us, Steve. We're all on the same page.
You showed up late. That doesn't count anyway.
Perry, I have a quick question for you. You're sitting in front of a picture of Yogi Berra Stadium at Montclair State University.
Well, see, this is kind of like a visual trick question, because it's the closing scene of Gary's wonderful documentary that he made about his law school recreation. Gosh, when was that, Gary? Back in 2010?
I think it was 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
At which Harvey and I were judges. And he closed it out with this great montage of his kids
we went on a
sitting
trip
at
there, yeah.
Yeah, at the school, and then at this ballpark set against Booker T and the MG's Green Onions. So just in tribute to Gary's creativity, I created
I
this
sent
document.
out, I don't really like to talk about myself, but I was cleaning out my files and I found this excerpt of this trial I wrote in 2008. And it's like 6 minutes long. And that picture behind Perry was in fact the closing. We would go on we went to Cooperstown that year, and then we also went to Yogi Berra's museum there. So, but that snippet was really not only a labor of love, it was 6 minutes long. The trial itself was about an hour and 15 minutes. And, we had newspaper coverage. Josh Prager came with his father. It was a big deal. Perry and Jerry Leibowitz were two of the.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I forgot it was Jerry, not Harvey. My bad.
Yeah, Jerry and Perry were in it. And even though they were Giant fans, they swore to, be.
Yes, we were totally impartial,
Exactly.
unbiased.
Trial was skewed.
So that was a real highlight.
It's a wonderful, Gary, it's a wonderful clip. It was just it's so enjoyable.
Wonderful.
It was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for me personally, one of the best things to come out of that was a very solid friendship with Joshua, because I knew him, just from seeing him at book signings and stuff. But being there with him that day gave me the chance to, spend a little time with him. And I want you to know that for the next 8 years, I gave up my Sundays making hundreds of dollars every day, working 3-4 games on a Sunday. I gave that up to go to Central Park at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning and umpire his overhand softball games that he put together with you, where he would pitch. He would pitch overhand softball, and the guys, they didn't have an umpire before I started showing up. And when he asked me to come, he said, you know, I don't do softball. I'm baseball trained, and that's what I've been doing for 30 years. But the first game I got out there and worked, the players were just so amazing and thankful. And I mean, it was such a refreshing change from, you know, being yelled at and sweating my brains out in the hot sun for, you know, very little appreciation, to working Josh's games where I would show up and the players would go, oh, Perry, we're so glad you're here. We're so glad you're here. It's so much better when you're here. Everybody swings the bat. Nobody waits for ball. It's just everything moves smoother. And it was just the greatest experience. I loved doing that for him. And he stopped doing it when he got married and started having kids. But the league is still going strong.
When he a week later, he was being interviewed at Google, and he actually said, you know, he was in a Queens, New York schoolroom.
I remember that.
His kid was portraying him, and they asked him, you know, why did he write the book? To make money? And he said, no, he loves baseball and he loves mysteries. And, you know, to hear an author talk about my kids at Google, you know, it was very, very rewarding.
Big Bernie Williams fan.
Mars, go ahead.
Oh, my Audible now. My Audible.
Maybe.
Okay. I wanted to bring up something about Willie Mays Field. It's not changing the name, it's adding the name, and the precedence for that is Ricky Henderson Field at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. I think that's a relative.
They named that for Ricky?
Ricky Henderson Field at Oakland Alameda Coliseum. If they're going to
done deal.
Yeah, they did. No, they did that a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't have the A's one up us.
Right. So there you go. Legal precedent.
There's been some talk about calling
better
City
ball
Field
players
for
than
Tom
Ricky
Seaver,
Henderson.
too.
In the Bay Area, Oakland is definitely the second city.
Yeah.
Did Willie Mays ever sit and play cards in the final inning of a key postseason game?
No way.
Exactly. I rest my case.
You got my vote.
Yeah.
Dave, I wanted to ask you a question about the Godfather movie. Was that Ernie Harwell announcing?
No. That is
it was the Russ Hodges.
It's Russ.
It was the Hodges version. Yeah.
I mean, I sat there and I listened to it very, very closely when I heard it, because it was clearly a baseball game.
Yeah.
And you know, anytime I hear the magic sounds, I tune in closely. And as soon as I heard him say, you know, Hartung on third, you know, Lotman on second, but he'll be running like the wind, I said, bingo. And I knew the exact date and time of the murder.
Dave,
still around.
Dave, if you listen to the movie The Bronx Tale, and many of you have listened to The Bronx Tale, it's the same thing, only it's the 1960 World Series. When De Niro's driving the bus, they're listening to Game 7.
Well, that I'd rather not listen to.
This is a story retold many times.
What's the Billy Crystal movie where he teaches his grandson to overcome his speech deficiency and parody the Russ Hodges call?
That's with Bette Midler. That's a very good movie.
Yeah, Bette Midler, Billy Crystal. I can't remember the name of the movie. But he teaches the grandson to do, you know, the Giants win the pennant,
You know, Tom, I don't know if you know, when the kid does that, one of the judges is Ralph Branca.
Okay. No, I did not know that.
Next time, look at the table of the judges who are judging this talent show, and Ralph Branca is sitting there smiling.
Very good. Gary, what's the name of the movie?
I don't remember right now, but
That's the
great
name of the movie. I don't remember.
Looking it up.
Faber also is a book about baseball and the movies, so it might be in there.
Hey,
David,
Gary,
have you seen the Branca, the book that he came out with, and also the DVD after? I guess
No, I
Thompson's already dead.
never read Branca's book.
You know, it's his side of the story. You find, you know,
Yeah,
there
I
was
should really read it. I forget what its name is, but actually I should get it. I just haven't done so.
okay.
You got to remember that I get torn. I don't have that much money, and I write for money about articles and books about World War II history. So there are many times when I say, "Oh, do I want to get this fascinating book about about the 1930s Yankees, or do I want to get this fascinating book about the Maginot Line?" I don't know what the hell to do. I just got, I give in. Like today, I got a book about on Amazon. I'm sorry, on eBay about the making of Pride of the Yankees, which everybody, is an
terrific book. A lot of stuff in there that nobody knows.
Yeah,
left field duel hired to teach him how to swing the bat lefty.
Yeah.
He was a terrible athlete as a kid. He was right-handed.
Tom, it's parental guidance, Tom.
Parental guidance, right. Thank you. Marissa Tomei, Billy Crystal.
If you guys never saw that movie, besides the Branca moment, Billy Crystal's ambition in life, he is the Fresno Grizzlies announcer. He wants to be the San Francisco.
Oh, I did see that movie. Now
Very good movie.
Well, my ambition in life is to spend a weekend in the Bahamas with Marissa Tomei, but I don't think that's gonna happen either.
Anybody else have anything they want to ask Dave or say?
Please, somebody ask something because we can't end on that.
Hey, all right. Let me just, I don't know what this guy, I got an obscure book.
No, remember that one. That came out after Forlini's. I've seen that one. Yep.
And it's co-authored by Bobby Thompson.
Correct.
And a guy named Lee Hyman and Bill Gutman. And I brought this book to the dinner that I first met Bobby in. I don't know if you could see it. It's kind of hard. But he wrote a beautiful inscription. You can't see it. You can't see it. But it says, to Harvey,
there it is.
Been great tonight to meet with a real giant. It's been fun swapping old giant tales. The funny thing about the book, which I read God knows how many years ago, it's got a foreword by Leo DeRocha and an afterword by Ralph Branca. When I took the book out and I asked Bobby to autograph, everybody was having him autograph baseballs, and I bring out this book, and he says to me, "Do you really think I wrote that book?" And I looked him straight in the face and I said, "Sure."
The only baseball book that I believe was actually written by its author was R.A. Dickey's book, because one, he was an English major, and two, it is very intensely personal. I mean, hell, not even Ball 4 was written by Jim Bouton.
Really?
Yeah, Lenny Schechter. Lenny Schechter was the wordsmith.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Bouton talks into a tape recorder. Lenny Schechter turns it into English. You look at all these. You look at all these baseball autobiographies, and they're all, they've all got their ghosts. Carly Stremski did one. He said his work was he filled out 3 questionnaires, handed them back to his ghost, and the ghost did the rest. But Dickey had suffered childhood sexual abuse, and there was no way he was gonna entrust this horror show to some some jackass who was just gonna do it for bucks. And I have a lot of respect for him doing that, and more importantly, coming forward with that, because a lot of men won't admit to that. I mean, the childhood sexual abuse made Mickey Mantle a bigger wreck than booze.
Yeah.
It's in Jane Levy's biography.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horrific times.
So Bobby Thompson and Ralph Branca made a fair amount of money going on the chicken and peas circuit, right?
Oh, hell yes.
Corporate dinners and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So my son worked for MasterCard for a number of years. I have a Louisville Slugger signed by both Branca and Thompson, and made especially handgraphed to my name. So they would do these corporate dinners, and I guess there was a good fee connected to all that, probably.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that they used it well in their business work. Like, you know, Thompson became a serious businessman, and when he had to sit down and meet new clients, you know, they'd go to all excited over his feat, and he talked to them about it with that basically rehearsed accounts. And then once he'd done that, then he'd move on to the main subject because he got their attention. Branca sold insurance, and you know, he could talk with authority about how after he'd gone through the home run, that the following spring he got injured, you know, slipped in a soda pop bottle, and that basically ended his baseball career and put him in a very difficult position. How am I going to feed my family? And he could use that to talk about, now what if you get injured or you get killed? How's going to feed your family? That's why you should buy my, you know, Ronco insurance, and that worked for him. And I got to tell you, you can laugh all you want about selling insurance, but that was how he did his business, and that doing that probably protected and helped a lot of the clients he sold policies to. So, you know, I'm not going to look down at that or sneeze that. The joke I'm going to make is when people were afraid of my pet snake, and that they'd say, what do you think? He's going to sell you insurance?
An anecdotal story to tell you about the I was 4 years old at the time, and my pop called up. He was working in Midtown Manhattan, and he said, the Giants got 2 runners on base. Betty, turn on the TV. We had a 13-inch black and white RCA. I was 4. My mom put me on her lap. Thompson hit the home run. She's whooping it up, and my 1-month-old brother wakes up, so she had to carry me into the bedroom just to, you know, appease him. But I have the vague recollection, and I don't really know what was going on since I was only 4, but I saw it on TV and I don't even remember it.
Yeah. Well, that happens in life. The biggest thing I remember about the Apollo 11 landing was my mother yanking me out of the sack at 10 o'clock at night to see it on a black and white TV. And she's excited because she was a technical editor in technical fields, you know, engineering and science. And so she's going nuts over it. I'm wondering, why am I being woken at 10 o'clock at night? Who are these people on this black and white TV screen in this lousy color? And then there's this graphic, first man in the moon. Yeah, really? What? Who? You know?
It is a little amazing that the Polo Grounds on October 3rd, 1951 was not a sellout crowd.
Right.
That is.
It was Rosh Hashanah.
California.
No, the third game was after Rosh Hashanah. The first two were Rosh Hashanah.
Willie's catch was Willie's
It
catch.
was something they were unprepared for.
Willie's catch in '54 was Rosh Hashanah.
That too. That was my excuse for staying home from school. I saw that one.
There was a weather issue that day, if memory serves. There was a heavy overcast that threatened. They thought it might rain, which I thought would threaten the game. But you're right, it was not a packed house, and you got to also remember that in that '54 game, when the guy who wrote the book he was able to go up and buy a ticket for the game that morning. And every time I read that segment in that book, I think, yeah, he went to the Polo Grounds to buy a ticket for a World Series game that morning. Boy, that's really got to happen again.
Well, it did happen in the Oakland Coliseum. The 3 consecutive World Series, you could buy a ticket the day of the game. It wasn't sold out.
It probably happened this past World Series too.
Yeah, right. That's true. You know, LA. Actually, LA understood. I saw a game at Dodger Stadium there I swear, I don't think anybody was seriously watching the game. They were throwing around beach balls, getting their suntans, trying to impress members of the opposite sex, and looking through with their binoculars to see if any famous people were there.
Dodger fans arrive in the 3rd inning and they leave in the 8th inning so they can beat the traffic home.
Right. That's
Real
it.
fans.
Yeah. And it was funny because my brother-in-law who got us the tickets, he says to my wife, "Oh, we can leave before the game's over, right?" And she said, she just cracked up and saying, "You don't know my husband that well, do you? He doesn't, I don't leave until the final out." And then
never leave until the game is all over.
The Cubs beat the Dodgers that day. I was very pleased. And after the game, they let kids run around the diamond. And we both turned to my daughter, who was 9 or 10 at the time. And it's like, you're going to run around in the diamond because whoever runs around the diamond has to go down there with an adult. And we want to walk on the field at Dodger Stadium. And like, all right, I'll run around the diamond. So she ran around the diamond, and my brother-in-law didn't get the picture of her being, triumphantly stepping in home plate. So she agreed to run around the diamond again. And when she got to home plate, she did a very triumphant, "I scored the winning run." And we got the picture.
Dave, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Dave, a round of applause. Great presentation.
Yeah, great job.
And
Very well.
Here's hoping everybody gets the COVID shots, and maybe we can go to a Giant Mets game at Citi Field this coming summer.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Reminder, next week we have Jerry Eisenberg, who is just a legendary journalist. So please try to make sure to be here. I think it's going to be an amazing night.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
You have the Willie Mays in front of you?
Oh, nice.
What it is my first and only trip to Citi Field, which is is a Dodger monument. Nothing for the Giants really, other than the green seats. And I'm walking to my seat, and I see this guy walking at me. This was in 2009 with the shirt.
Is that Mars, Steve?
It's nobody, but there it is in advance.
Steve, is there a way I can talk to you a minute after this? Because I'd like to talk to you about junior high school 115.
You can't really stay on here like that. I could call you.
Yeah, how about if I give you a call? What's your number?
You ready? 623.
Okay.
670. 2859.
I'll give you a call in a few minutes. I just want.
I got a funny story about Citi Field. It opens up. I go to the game. I'm angry at everything. Everything. It's not Mets. It's just purely Dodgers. Furious. My friend is telling me, "Calm down, calm down." I go to the team store. There's a section for Dodger stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
So he goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I got to find the manager." Manager says, "Is there a problem?" I said, "Yeah. It's supposed to be Mets Stadium, and there's nothing but Mets, and then Dodgers all the way in that corner. A lot of stuff. Is there any Giant stuff? New York Giant stuff?" No, no. Why would they have Giant? He doesn't know anything. I said, "Well, you know what? Orange came from the Giants. It's not only blue.
Orange and the green seats. That's what they tell you, right?"
I lost it, and you know what? And then it became a regular thing. Every time I go to a game, I said, I look for the manager, and he rolled his eyes up. I said, I know. Finally, they had stuff at one of the team store, an old 1920 New York Giants hat. I said, finally something. It was
great. I'm wearing it.
But I took it. I bought it. Yeah,
I'm wearing it,
and I bought it. I said, finally, because this is ridiculous.
Because the old owners of the Mets, they were growing up. They were Dodger fans.
Yeah,
that's why the outside of Citi Field looks like Ebbets Field.
Fred Wilpon,
and that's why the Mets don't have an identity in that ballpark.
Fred Wilpon went to Lafayette. Fred Wilpon went to Lafayette High School in Brooklyn.
I know.
With
Sandy Koufax.
Sandy Koufax, correct.
Yeah.
And Wilpon pitched, and Koufax played first.
Hey, Frank. Frank, I know when the Giants left, you became a Met fan.
Yes.
Did you see any Met games at the Polo Grounds?
I was at the opening game, the first one.
at the Polo Grounds.
Yes.
Good for you. See, that's you know, the Mets have all these giveaways. I'm surprised in their history they never had like a Polo Grounds giveaway.
But
Like the
don't
one
tell,
that we
don't
got
tell the
today.
people I work for, they might dock my pay.
You know, the closest thing they ever had of that was at Shea, and I forgot what it was called, but it was like when you get to the turnstiles, pick your hat, whether it was a Brooklyn Dodger hat or New York Giants hat. I remember that, but
That's how I got my Giants hat.
Exactly, that's mine too.
When Steve and I went to AT&T Park, you know, when they had the Polo Grounds night, they gave a replica of the Polo Grounds. You know, it wasn't very good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but I'm surprised that the Mets haven't had something similar because
Danbury Mint in Connecticut makes all those statues of all those.
You know what I do have though is I have that musical tin of the Polo Grounds. It's a great tin.
Nice.
63, when your second year of the Mets, they held a Willie Mays night at the Polo Ground.
They did.
On Friday night. And Duke Snyder hit 2 home runs, and they said, you know, Duke's night instead of, you know, Willie's night. And I think May of 63, they had a Willie Mays night at the Polo Ground.
Did they have a STEM museum?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they may have.
I remember that. It was
Well, they do have a seat from the Polo Grounds in their little museum. If you look at it, one of the little box seats are there. I have that seat also that I took out of the last game, sitting in my garage.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's the picture really when they were running up the stairs. There's the chair.
Nice.
You know what they did with some of those Polo Ground seat rows? They took a bunch of the rows of seats, complete with the NY on the side, to the fire department's old museum in Spring Street. So the kids could sit in them when they were watching films about fire safety. And then the fire department museum moved from, Duane Street. They were in Duane Street. Then they moved to their new facility in Spring Street. And I don't know what they did with the rows of seats between Duane and Spring Street. But I remember sitting in those, you know, I saw the fire films and seeing the NY logo and wondering what the heck. And then, ooh, I got it.
Well, the light stanchions are out here in Arizona at the Phoenix Municipal Stadium. Has the light stanchions from the Polo Grounds.
There's a restaurant.
Perry, Henry Schulman, you know, retired. He was replaced by Susan Slusser. And you know, she was the president of the BBWAA. Now she's the head writer of the Chronicle. No, now she's the Giant.
Oh, right.
This must have been recent. This is recent.
Oh, very recent.
Yeah, like a month ago.
I just spoke
exactly. So I reached out to her, and I'm going to see if she responds to us. You know, maybe.
Nice.
You get her, your stock goes way up.
I love getting the women here for Perry, so you know.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Listen, all of you is as much romance as I can handle. So,
well, we love you, Perry.
I love you too. Thanks.
Mars, go ahead, Mars.
Totally agree with you about no homage to Lippman built City Field. The only thing that resembled the Polo Grounds was the overhang in right field that replicated, is supposed to replicate the overhang in left field.
Yeah, but you know, it's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, honestly, it should be their own identity. It shouldn't be any Ebbets Field. I mean, it took me 3 years to get used to that ballpark.
Marsh, what did you say the overhang was to represent? Because my understanding it was to represent Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, they wanted to do it. It was called Coogan's Landing when they opened it.
No, Jeff Wilpon, a certified moron.
Well,
when they were designing the field, told a story about visiting his uncle or somebody in Detroit, and he was fascinated by the overhang in that old stadium. That's why they had that overhang.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with the Polo Grounds. It's completely idiotic.
It is.
Look at what I did. If there's the Curse of the Bambino and there's the Billy curse. I put a curse on the Mets that would never win a championship in that city field because there was no homage to the Giants in the Polo Grounds.
No, but it's also it took the Dodgers, what was it, 75 years to win a World Series at Ebbets Field?
Yeah.
And he built the stadium that looks like Ebbets Field. So how, what is it, 10 years?
He was a
They got
Brooklyn
another
Dodger
60
fan.
they had another 65 years to go.
You know, when he owned the team fully, he introduced a model of what the stadium was supposed to look like. That model, I mean, you can find that picture somewhere in the internet. It is exactly Ebbets Field with a retractable roof, the rolling in and out of the field, like what the Raiders have now. It obviously didn't happen because they didn't have the money. They were looking for the city to pay for the whole thing.
New Yankee Stadium was supposed to have a retractable roof as well, but then September 11th happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had gotten a chance to talk to Fred Wilpon in the Mets Hall of Fame. I happened to be there, and he's standing in the corner minding his own business. And I went over to him, and I chastised him, and I said, "Do you realize that half your fan base came from the Giants? It's not just a Dodger fan base." He says, "Well, we have black walls in the area," and like you used to, he had no answer. But I said, "You know what? Half your fans, count your fans. Half your fans came from the Giants."
That's right.
What would you have had them do at Citi Field to honor the Giants, though? What could they have done?
Make it not look like Ebbets Field.
Would you rather it look like Shea Stadium? That place was a dump.
No. They could have improved it, but one of the things that I really liked about Shea Stadium early years was the homage of the tiles, the orange and blue.
Okay.
Oh yeah, those were cute.
I really love that.
But you can't, somebody owns a team. It's their money.
I know.
They do what they want. So he's a Dodger fan, and
Yeah.
So listen,
Went to school with Koufax. They went to same school.
while we're bashing the Mets, can we give Joan Payson credit for bringing Willie back to New York for the retirement?
Absolutely.
And also for hosting a Willie Mays night in Shea Stadium in September. What was that? 73.
73. One other thing about Joan Payson.
You know what else happened that night?
Yeah.
That night in that game, that was the night the Dave Augustine of the Pirates hit the ball
The
that
ball
landed
off
on
the
the
wall.
top of the wall,
The
and
ball on the wall.
straight into a Popeye the glove of a Popeye Cleon Jones, spun around, fired home to Ron Hodges, who nailed the Pirate runner at the plate.
He threw the ball to Garrett. Garrett in turn threw it to Hodges.
Right.
And it was one. Ron Hodges won the game in extra innings. But let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I don't go on Twitter. I do not. But the new owner wants feedback of the new ballpark. I've been going back and forth on it. I told my wife, I just want to go on Twitter just to say something about what they should do to the ballpark. But one of the things that's been bothering me forever was, Hank Aaron played for the Braves when they were in Milwaukee, Atlanta. Then he goes to Milwaukee Brewers. They retired his number. Mets can't retire his number? I think Joan Payson wanted to retire his number.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Mets retire his number.
Well, one thing
I really would.
Yeah.
I really would.
One thing about Joan Payson is that the Giants board of directors at 57, I believe they had 9 members. 8 voted to move.
Yep.
1 didn't. The one that didn't, Joan Payson.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I would love to see that number retired. And
Which number?
Which number? About it at his
Which number?
24. Well, Robinson Cano wears it now.
It's proudly worn by Robinson Cano this year. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not.
That's right. It's semi-retired this year.
Steve, it's not retired by the Mets.
I would take his number away and retire it all time. Willie Mays' number should be up there.
Quick story about Joan Payson. When I first got my cat and got back here to Florida, I live in Port St. Lucie now, where the Mets play their spring training games, obviously. I found a vet who was my housemate's vet. He recommended this vet to me. And I walked in wearing my Mets face mask. And the vet was looking at my cat and looking at my mask, and he goes, "Oh, are you a Mets fan?" And to me, that's like kind of. And so he got to talking to me, and he said, "Joan Payson paid for my veterinary training," and I was. Yeah, I said, "How did that happen?" And he said, "Because when he was a college kid, he used to take care of her horses, I guess out in Long Island or wherever she kept them. They were champion horse breeders, apparently, the family.
Yes, they were.
And she was so impressed by his skills with her horses that she offered to put him through veterinary school. And so now, 50 years later, he's my cat's veterinarian because Joan Payson put him through school."
Hey, speaking of memorabilia, did Coogan's Restaurant, 168th Street and Broadway, did that go out of business? That
I
had a
believe
lot
it
of-
did. I believe it did.
Yeah, no, it did,
I think
definitely.
it did.
That had a lot of Giants memorabilia in there.
Yes, it did. Yes, it
It
did.
was open school night dinners.
Loved
I
that
used to
place.
teach.
Loved it.
So, I mean, did they just close for the COVID or did they went out of business?
I think that's what happened, but I can't swear.
No, the rent was jacked up and they couldn't pay it. That's why.
Well, and the fact that they were
Here he
closed
is.
for COVID early on.
Barbara Ryan,
there's-
it's nice you got your camera working. Nice to
What's
see
the-
you.
what- Perry,
Frank's
what's the
very
name?
happy.
Perry, what's the name of your cat?
He's Prince Valentine. He's my little prince. No.
Oh, he's
My
he's
little
got a
cousin.
question. He wants to talk.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah.
Dave, did you get to see the Polo Grounds exhibit? What's the name of that museum there on the east side?
Museum of the City of New York.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
No, not the museum.
Morris Jumo.
Oh, Morris.
Yes,
Jumo.
I did. Yes, I did. I took a lot of pictures.
That was a very nice exhibit.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done. I got a T-shirt there too, which I'm wearing.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, I got one of them.
I'm sorry, where's this museum again?
It was above the Polo Ground, Morris Jumel Museum.
The Jumel Mansion, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's where Aaron Burr lived.
Here.
Okay.
Ah.
Yeah. After he married New York's biggest trollop.
Oh, that's
for-
another, that's
for
another
meeting.
Zoom.
Another
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Very,
We'll
very-
hopefully
Have
we'll
to
see
talk about her
everybody.
and Trixie Ferganza.
We'll see everybody next Thursday with Jerry Eisenberg.
Yep.
And great meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Dave,
David.
thanks again. And
Yes,
thank
you,
Dave.
Thank you, Gary, for
Thank you,
everything you
Gary.
did.
Thank
Good
you,
guys.
guys.
Gary, great letter, great
Right.
letter. Gary.
Gary, I'm gonna send you a check for that.
Go Giants.
oh,
Be
Giants.
good, guys.
you bet.
I'll close up behind everybody.
Take care.
All right.
Okay. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting extra
LG.
innings, Gary.
Hey, Julie, can you
Heidi's
turn,
corner.
no, turn it back on again.
We're out of here.
Dave, thanks again.
My pleasure.
Great job.
Wonderful. I'm just
Hey,
proud to
Julie?
be here.
Julie?
Andy, have a good night. Frank, Barbara, Brian,
Thank you.
and Tom, be good. Mike, go call Steve.